Sometimes the most powerful forces on our planet aren't captured by some high-tech scientific instrument, but by the shaky lens of a smartphone. In this explainer, we're going to dive into some source material that pulled together some of the most jaw-dropping moments of nature's fury ever caught on camera. It gives us this raw, totally unfiltered look at its incredible power.
It's words just like these, right? Spoken in a moment of just pure shock and, frankly, terror. That's the heart of what we're looking at today. This isn't some polished documentary with a calm narrator. No, these are real, in-the-moment reactions to things that are almost impossible to wrap your head around while they're happening.
And that really is the central theme here, isn't it? The sheer, completely unpredictable, and just overwhelming force of the natural world.
So to try and get a handle on all this chaos, we're going to break it down just like the source material does. We're going to look at where these disasters actually come from. We'll start with the ground right under our feet, then we'll move to the oceans, and we'll finish up with a fury that comes down from the sky.
Okay, first up, the Earth itself. The very ground we think of as solid, as dependable, well, it can move with a terrifying amount of force, all driven by seismic energy and the simple, brutal power of gravity.
The one we all know, of course, is the earthquake. And yeah, that's the textbook definition, but seeing what it actually does, well, that brings the definition to life in a way words just can't.
For instance, there was that huge 7.1 magnitude earthquake that hit Alaska back in 2018. Now, that kind of force is really hard to even imagine, but there's this footage from another quake in Turkey that gives you a perfect example. A totally calm swimming pool 1 second turns into a violent wave machine the next. It just shows you how powerfully the ground we're standing on can actually move. But it's not always about shaking. Sometimes the Earth just gives up. In Norway, someone caught on camera an entire slice of land, with houses still sitting right on top of it, literally peel away from the coastline and slide straight into the sea. It's like watching a catastrophe in slow motion.
And you hear someone watching this just say that. A simple, chilling observation. Talk about an understatement. It just perfectly captures that terrifying feeling of watching someone's home just disappear.
And that brings us right to our next domain, water. Because honestly, whether it's coming from the ocean or falling from the sky, when it decides to move in huge quantities, there's very little that can stand in its way.
One of the most devastating forms of this, obviously, is a tsunami. The source material has some really harrowing footage from the 2011 tsunami in Japan, where you just see these waves wash over entire towns, carrying cars and buildings like they were nothing.
But the threat isn't always on such a massive scale. The footage shows all kinds of water events. You see a flash flood just demolish a goat farm in a matter of seconds. You see a giant cruise ship, a floating city, get hit by a wave that makes it look like a little toy. And then there's this terrifying thing called a rock flood, where it's not just water, it's a whole river of giant boulders just surging down a hill.
So you really got to understand the force we're dealing with. The source points to one instance where wind and waves were strong enough to push a 230,000-ton ship. Just let that sink in. An object that massive was just moved, effortlessly. That's the kind of power we're talking about here.
All right, so we've covered the ground, we've covered the water, now let's look up. Our third domain is the atmosphere. It's where all those changes in pressure and temperature can cook up some of the most visually spectacular and destructive events on the whole planet. So, to put it simply, when you get different air masses clashing and the pressure changes really fast, you get storms. And from those storms, you get the wind, the rain, and the hail that cause so much chaos in all this footage.
And here's another one of those perfect quotes, where you can hear someone just trying to process what they're seeing in real time. He's talking about hail, but not just any hail. We're talking about chunks of ice falling from the sky that are just shockingly, unnaturally huge.
And you know what? He wasn't exaggerating. The hailstones were actually bigger than a standard baseball. The video shows them to shattering car windows, putting massive dents in metal. It's not a hailstorm, it's a bombardment. And the sky has a whole lot of other weapons in its arsenal. The source shows us flooding from a typhoon in Taiwan, the insane, focused power of a tornado that can just casually toss a trampoline into the air, a truly apocalyptic wall of dust that makes a ship at sea look tiny, and lightning strikes so bright and powerful it's hard to believe they're real. So, after seeing all this chaos, from the earth, the water, the sky, what's the big takeaway? Well, the source material ends by shifting the focus back to us, to the people on the ground. And the final message is really clear. All this footage confronts us with two big truths.
First, speed. These things don't build up slowly. They happen in an instant. And second, fragility. It shows us that the solid, dependable world we've built for ourselves is actually incredibly delicate. So the real insight here isn't just about having an emergency kit, it's about a complete shift in how we see the world.
And that brings us to our last thought. This footage does more than just shock us. It really challenges our assumptions about being in control. It forces us to ask a really big question. If this is the planet's true power, are we building our lives and our cities in a way that actually respects it? How does finally admitting our own fragility change what our priorities should be for the future?